There are so many atheists out there who reject God for these couple of reasons, and I really wish it would stop. Let's talk about it.
That doesn't make any sense, right? And I flipped the book, and I'm like, holy shit, that doesn't make any sense either.
Do you remember a particular passage that really didn't make sense?
So I'd say that the straw that broke the camel's back, in this case, almost literal. So I read a whole bunch of the Quran, and great parts in there, but tons of shit that doesn't make sense. Then I'm like, maybe the Bible's got it figured out, right? So I start reading it, and I'm getting the foreskin, and we're sprinkling goat's blood everywhere, and it's madness. I get to the Tower of Babel story, and I'm like, wait, let me get this right. Humans worked together, built this beautiful tower, okay? And God was jealous, and then he knocked the tower down, and he made all of us speak different languages, so we couldn't work together anymore. And I'm like, okay, if that God exists, then I'm against it.
I get it. I can understand that.
So there's a lot of people who will say stuff like this, and I'll talk about the Tower of Babel in a second. This is Cenk Uygur, big leftist, liberal kind of a guy, and an atheist, former Muslim, as you was mentioning, tried out the Bible, then went to atheism, and has stayed there ever since. There's a lot of people who will say this. They will say, I don't believe in God because I read the Bible, and in the portion of the Bible that I did read, God did this thing that I didn't like. God did this thing that I disagree with. God did this thing that makes me feel like God doesn't know what he's doing. God doesn't know what he's talking about. And a lot of the time when it's like a guy like him, their understanding of things will be very limited. I'll just put it that way. What did he say about the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11? That they were all just happily working together and God got jealous. And then God decided to just break it all up because it was just too much happiness and too much unity. Is that what you read in Genesis 11? Well, let's find out. Let's read it together. In Genesis 11, it says, Now the whole earth had one language and one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Then they said to one another, Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They had brick for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, Come, let us build ourselves a city, and a tower whose top is in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. So what is the actual intention here? Just all happy-go-lucky unity? No. Let us build for ourselves a city. And then let's build ourselves a tower that is in the heavens. Let's place ourselves in heaven, to put it that way. And then let us make a name for ourselves, lest we all be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. And the Lord said, Indeed, the people are one, and they all have one language, and this is what they begin to do. Now nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come, let us go down there and confuse their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore its name is called Babel, because the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. So what did we read there? Did we read God just being spiteful or being driven by jealousy and being so petty or something like that? No. What we read was God is, in this, he is countering their human arrogance, their human pride, that is bringing them to a point where they are already trying to replace God. You think about that. They are already trying to replace God. They just started. We're post-flood, not super, super long, but it hasn't been that long, and they're already trying to replace God and put themselves literally in the place of God. They're trying to put themselves, making a tower that places them in the heavens, foolishly, of course. And then they say, this is not like to give glory to God. This is to make a name for ourselves. And so God, instead of like striking them all down, which he could have done, and he did 5 chapters earlier, God, in his mercy, says, I'm going to do something that is going to curb this, that's going to stop this, it's going to stifle this, not this awesome, happy unity, but this arrogant attempt at putting themselves in my place and to give themselves the glory that only I deserve. Is it truly like such an evil, petty, jealous thing for God to say, you know what, I know what's best for people, and what's best for people is they not be arrogant and glory, try to make themselves God, but that they trust in me. And so therefore, instead of striking them down, I'm actually just going to make it so they have to live lives relatively separately in terms of their communication to one another, so that they can focus on their own lives, the things that matter, their own families, and therefore hopefully will give the attention to me that will bless them and enrich them in their lives. There's also other reasons, like by giving them different languages, he gave them different cultures and allowed them to spread more and to subdue the earth and all that, which was supposed to be done and is a net positive for the world today as well. But that was really the main reason.
Well, you got to read the New Testament.
Yeah. New Testament's better. It is better. I mean, because
New Testament's cool. A lot of people say that. And Andrew Schulz has been flirting with Christianity. He probably is a secret Christian.
on the Mount, Jesus is a nice guy. And he's like, hey, you know what? Maybe the poor, the needy, right? And maybe
Boys.
Yeah.
Probably because the Old Testament was making too many people feel like you. You know, so it was harder to get people to submit to that religion if they didn't believe in it.
That's a funny way to characterize it. As if God was like testing out like focus groups or something. Like Old Covenant goes, okay, that one made the people feel really icky. That one made them feel bad. It was pretty negative. Let's do an opposites thing, and let's go to the New Testament and make it like more joyful and peaceful, and that will be what gets the most people. Something like that. It's a very silly. It's kind of like a childish way to look at it, or a business way rather to look at it. When you do understand the story of the Bible, you know that God's not like, all right, I'm gonna do an opposites thing here, but there is a beautiful story of fulfillment that you see throughout the entire thing, and it is one beautiful track from creation, which was great, glorious, peace, all that stuff. It is like as New Testament as you can get, if not better, if you even want to think about it that way. Then the fall, which creates all these harsh conditions, the fall of man, and then God redeems that and really starts to finalize that redemption in the story of Jesus, in the life and person of Jesus. I mean, it's a beautiful redemption story, but a lot of people who just don't read the Bible that much or don't know that much will not understand it. And I'm not trying to be condescending. I mean, literally, if you don't put the time into it, how are you going to understand that?
Well, I mean, there's two things. So Old Testament was originally Jewish, right? And so in the Jewish religion, you don't want converts. They're like, oh, can I be Jewish? Like, no, we're cool. Okay. I had a friend who got married, who's Jewish, married.
It's not just that you don't want converts, is that you don't necessarily need them to become Jewish to have a relationship with God. And I just talked about this in my last video on Israel and whether or not you need to support the modern state of Israel, whether or not you needed to even do that under the old covenant. Check that out.
Mexican girl, and she had to go through, jump through 18 different hoops just to become Jewish, right?
Yeah.
So they weren't even trying to sell it, right? To be fair to them. But if you did try to sell it, it's a tough sell. It's a super tough sell. Jesus came up with a genius idea. He's like, I forgive you all. Okay, they're like, oh, that's awesome. I did a lot of terrible shit. You forgive me? That's awesome. And he came up with a second idea. He's like,
Technically, John the Baptist came up.
Jesus came up with this awesome idea. I forgive you. And everyone's like, oh, wow, that's great. This is honestly, I laugh, but it honestly makes me sad a little bit because it reminds me that there are so many people out there, and this is the last thing I want us to think about. There's so many people out there who don't believe in God because they literally think it is just too good to be true. And they must feel like so horrible about their sin, and you're supposed to feel those things, but so horrible to the point where they believe the idea that it could ever be made right, the idea that I could ever truly have a redemption story in all of this is just too good to be true. There's no way that's real. And that's what he says. He's treating it like it's just this created story and as if it's too good to be true, but it is true and it is good at the same time.
and then Jesus came up with love, which is a genius idea. I love you all. And people are like, oh, I like that.
Yeah.
So this guy loves me and he's going to take care of me.
And that's also just ignorant of all the passages in the Old Testament where God demonstrates his love. For all the instances of God's wrath, there are many more instances of God's love and mercy towards the people. And that gets understated, underplayed all the time by people who are skeptics or just opponents of theism, Christianity in general.
He's like, yeah, I'm signing up for that. And the trade that they made, the real guy who did all of this is Emperor Constantine. Right?
Oh, the Constantine thing, man. Oh, Emperor Constantine, the real guy, the man behind the curtain is Emperor Constantine. Man, this one always gets me. Now, I'm not going to get through the whole Constantine thing right now. You can check out this video. I'll link this in the description. But check out my video on this. I did a video about Constantine, and Wes Huff and Mike Wing were talking about it. Here's the clip.
That's kind of the one that's floated in the Da Vinci Code.
Yeah.
Dan Brown had Shirley Teabing in it, proposed this idea that Christianity was this theological quagmire, and the only reason we have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is because these heinous bishops of the Council of Nicaea, under the guidance of Emperor Constantine, chose those books for some sort of because they had content that would help them rule over the people. Kind of missed some of the things Jesus said about.
And then we'll have Rome crucify Jesus. That'll help. That'll help our authority.
So Constantine didn't just create Christianity. It drives me crazy. Council of Nicaea, Constantine is always that catch-all where people just say, yeah, that's when Christianity was really created. I had someone tell me this one time, how does it feel to know that Christianity was created by Rome, by Constantine? And that's not true. It is like one of the most historically illiterate things you can ever say. But again, there's this stuff that we just hear all the time, and then we start to assume that it's true, but it's so not, and it drives me crazy. Let me know what you think, though. Am I wrong about this? I think this is why a lot of atheists miss the plot and miss Christianity for reasons that really should be tempered and thought about in a more rational way, and not just, well, what I like has to be right. That's not the way that it works. What you like does not have to be right. And what your preferences are don't necessarily dictate what is good, what is bad. You should aspire to figure out what the true standard is in all these things. And maybe if you're talking about stuff that is not right, perhaps there is stuff therefore that is truly right, whether or not you think that. And if that's the case, then where does that come from? Where does that law come from that is greater than you, than me, that doesn't come from us? And who gave the law? That's got to be God. But let me know what you think. Again, like the video, subscribe to the channel, consider supporting on Patreon. God bless you. I love you. Lord willing, I will talk to you soon. Goodbye.